after the Pacific Palisades fire flattened entire communities in Los Angeles. Residents had their homes burglarized while they were still locked out of their neighborhoods, and shortly after, their streets were completely covered by mudslides. As other residents found that their insurance plans were nearly doubling overnight, only to discover later the LA Fire Department could have done much more to prevent the destruction. These wildfires were a tragedy all by themselves, but it really seems like every single thing you learn about them next makes them exponentially worse. As I don't lean into the conspiracies that the politicians themselves started these fires on purpose, I just don't think these fires would have been possible without their sheer negligence/incompetence. And anybody that would willingly vote for them again is literally playing with fire, just hoping their home won't be next. As remember, when Los Angeles caught on fire, Mayor Karen Bass was out partying in Ghana, as she initially didn't know how to react when the journalists would question her about it, only for her to later state she didn't regret going.
Looking back, would you have taken that trip overseas?
You know, I am going to focus today
But please,
on what we know.
But now, she wants an investigation as to why she went to Ghana.
I'm going to go to Ghana, which I know you've said was a mistake now. But I just am curious on the thought process behind it.
Right.
Because we know that there was warnings about the weather before you went, and you still went. What was the thought process behind going to Ghana?
So let me just tell you a couple of things. First of all, when the White House called and asked me if I would represent the president, I said yes. It was going to be a very, very short trip, over a weekend and 2 business days. We need to look at everything about the preparation and all of that for the fires, because I think when we evaluate that, we will find that although there were warnings that I frankly wasn't aware of, although there were warnings, I think our preparation wasn't what it typically is.
Warnings you weren't aware of? Because I know we were talking about it on the news. A lot of people were talking about the problems, warning that this was going to be a huge
deal.
So
when I talked about it with the fire chief, what she said is that we have warnings of Santa Ana winds a lot, but predicting this, and you saw, from the city, from the county, that level of preparation really didn't happen. So it didn't reach that level to me to say something terrible could happen and maybe you shouldn't have gone on the trip.
Why didn't it
But to
happen?
me, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's one of the things we need to look at. So 2 investigations are taking place. One internal to the city, and that's the Fire Commission, because that's mandated by the city charter. So the commission will hire an outside entity to examine everything, the pre-deployment, you know, why were firefighters sent home, you know, all of that should have taken place that didn't. And then also the governor has contracted with the Fire Safety Research Institute, which is a national institute that investigated what happened in the fires in Maui. So everything that happened, including that, needs to be examined. But I will tell you that I felt absolutely terrible not being here for my city and not being here for my family, who was impacted by the fires as well. And so when I say it was a mistake, absolutely, the idea that I was not present was very painful.
This is just the perfect encapsulation of everything wrong with these politicians. She's the elected leader of the city, but basically has zero idea on how anything is operating underneath her. The only thing she seems to be focused on is what the Democrats in DC are offering her, which is likely just padding for her resume and her next step in her political career. It's absolutely ridiculous for her to call for investigations into why she went partying in Ghana after everybody in LA knew about the historic winds on their way that week. Even after her party has been non-stop crying over climate change, she now thinks that trip that she apparently doesn't regret going on, we now need to pay for people to figure out who holds the blame, because somebody should be fired or forced to resign, but apparently it's just not her. And it's not just her that needs to resign, as California burned years before, burned in January, and will likely burn again, as Governor Newsom continues to ignore actually following through on wildfire preparation, as he seems more focused on spending $9.5 billion, with a B on healthcare for undocumented individuals, making up nearly 1/3 of the state's deficit. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom is termed out, so he can't run for governor again, and I personally think the wildfire response, combined with his response to homelessness, completely ends his presidential ambitions. So what this really comes down to is, who is going to become governor in late 2026? As the entire state is plagued by lawlessness. The Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco had previously announced he was changing teams and becoming a Trump supporter.
Hello, California. It's Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. You know, for the past 30 years, I've been doing everything I could to keep our community safe by arresting criminals and putting them in jail and putting them in prison, keeping them out of our neighborhoods. For the last 5 years, I've been very critical about our governor for slashing our budgets from corrections, for letting prisoners out early, for closing our prisons. I've been critical of our state legislature for passing laws to make it harder to put people in prison. I've been critical for their changing laws that let prisoners out early. And I've been critical for our Attorney General for seemingly not caring about crime and really being an embarrassment to law enforcement. Law enforcement, apparently, if you listen to our governor, is systemically racist. If you listen to our legislature, our laws are systemically racist. Our judicial system is systemically racist. All of these people that are being put in jail are because of law enforcement bias and DA bias and all of these things. And so they let them out, they give them food, they give them housing, they give them money, they give them drugs and alcohol now. I gotta be honest, I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired. And I'm wondering if I'm having a change of heart and deciding that, you know what, maybe I've been wrong. And I think I'm going to change teams. I know it's going to make some of you angry. I know that you're going to be mad at me, but I'm going to change teams. I think it's time that instead of letting them out of jail and giving them alcohol and drugs and everything else, I think it's time we put a felon in the White House. Trump 2024, baby.
Fast forwarding to today, Bianco has announced he's running for governor.
I'm here to announce our campaign to be the next governor of California.
And if you've been watching this channel for a while, especially since during all the lockdowns, when Governor Gavin Newsom announced he wanted local law enforcement to crack down on violations, just not when the governor opens up his winery to dine indoors with his friends, but Bianco actually announced he and his deputies weren't going to enforce any of those lockdown orders on the citizens, which honestly, based on that alone, he's got my vote. Now, it would be difficult for anybody in law enforcement to win in California, but all the preliminary polling from the left indicates their frontrunner is former Vice President Kamala Harris, and her running on her experience as DA and the top cop against crime pretty much cancels out any anti-law enforcement angles they could use against Bianco. So hopefully Los Angeles residents and California residents as a whole finally come to their senses and vote for somebody that actually could make California great again. But if you appreciate my concise, lighthearted commentary on the tragic status that is today's reality, hopefully I've earned your subscription, then go check out the video on how the corporate media's attempt to slam Trump accidentally exposed their corruption.